In my YouTube suggestions, I have two channels with recurring themes. Games Workshop is failing, they're cheating, they're lying, or Games Workshop is fooling you to steal all your money. They usually pass with a slight annoyance, but this last one about the March price updates for some reason triggered me into putting this video out. It was probably just because I brought part of it up in my video about the Nachmund box, while at the same time finally becoming one too many. The reasons they annoy me is not only that they so obviously scream appeal to the crowd clickbait, but also that they remind me of people at work who will just whine about the problems the latest changes caused them, without ever bothering to find out why things have changed. Its title, pretty predictable, was something on the lines of Games Workshop's lot updates are unreasonable. The exact words doesn't really matter, and it could just as well have been excessive, devastating, unjust, or, you get the point. So, I fully trust Games Workshop and say that the March price updates were a good thing? No, of course not. It's just that if you just scratch the surface, even such seemingly simple thing as miniature prices can be quite tricky. Let's start at Games Workshop. They are a company, which means that their aim, like all other companies, is to make money. And they are free to set whatever prices they seem fit. This price certainly has a lower bound, as it has to cover all the expenses producing the goods. This might seem rather straightforward, but keep in mind that the production cost is not only plastic and cardboard. It's all kinds of abstract things like salaries, development cost, risk margins, and marketing. I'm pretty certain that not even Games Workshop themselves can calculate exact numbers, because no other company in the world can. There is also an upper bound, but it's even more abstract. £100 for a box of a few regular Orcs will obviously sell a very small amount of boxes, if any. While they do have to go above their lower bound, there is also pressure keeping the prices down. Raising the price is not free money. Right from the start, every increase will cause a certain decrease in the number of products sold. This is quite basic supply and demand. In this case, the limit is not the supply, but the demand, as they are selling something that has no real world value. Just make the zombie apocalypse test. If you have to pack stuff in a hurry before you leave to face an uncertain world, would you bring your plastic toy soldiers? Probably not. As there is no practical utility value, they have to create the demand. They have done so by creating great-looking models and games with a complementary imaginary world. Games Workshop has spent more than 30 years building an entire ecosystem of this. And don't forget that if you watch this video, you probably have benefited from this work. When it comes to their dominant position in miniature gaming, it also means that they have a unique selling point. If you want to play a miniature game and want to find an opponent in your town or to play a tournament, your absolute best bet is that it will be something Games Workshop. The term lingua franca comes to mind. There, we also once again get into value. The value is how useful something is for you and has nothing to do with price. A good example is that I have a bunch of X-Wing miniatures that currently have close to zero value, as I have no one to play. How much they cost me to buy is now irrelevant. In our mind, however, these concepts are commonly interchanged, and this is something marketing often exploits. One prime example is boxed sets. The full discount of a boxed set only applies if you actually use all the stuff in it. If you fully evaluate it, you will often find that if you just let one or two things be, you will actually have paid excess price for the rest of the models. That is why I'm always so sensitive about what I get rather than what it costs. And here we have the simple but powerful evaluation procedure I mentioned talking about the Nachmund box. Look at all the contents of the box. Look at your pile of shame. Note the items you know that you will use, and disregard all other stuff. Now look at the price, and ask yourself, is this what you're willing to pay for those items alone? If yes, go get it. I have no troubles paying good money for few things, as long as you're aware of what you're paying for. That evaluation also applies to separate boxes, but you often don't have the same kind of marketing price tricks that needs to be dispelled. But the pile of shame is still there, and you should still focus on your added value, not the price. This is also relevant if anyone, Games Workshop or otherwise, tells you that this or that product is of good or bad value. Don't listen. They're talking about the price, which is fixed and can be known to them. And you should focus on value, which is dependent on your situation. So, what do I think of these specific price updates? They claim to be around 5%, which in a company announcement probably means slightly more, if you look at the stuff that people actually buy. If this happens every 2 or 3 years, it's just a natural increase to keep up with inflation. It is still valid clickbait, but you should just ignore it and move on. If the prices are increasing faster than inflation, then it's a signal that something is out of tune. Here I have a real interest in reading about the changes. I want Games Workshop to prosper. I'm not a stock owner, and I don't care about Games Workshop directly, just as I don't expect them to care about me in particular. But a smooth running company is way more likely to put effort into doing fun stuff rather than to hunt money. And that is good news in my end. I can imagine that there are all kinds of threats to their position, such as 3D printing, consumption patterns, and smaller, more agile companies that can in essence piggyback on hard work and cater to specific profitable segments. One thing to keep in mind here is that the human brain is built to find patterns, and often does so even if there is none. I cannot emphasize this enough, and I will just conclude that with only half a year in miniatures, my best bet is just to count it as inflation increase and move on. It should be noted that I'm no professional economist and all kinds of terms might be used the wrong way here, but I hope I conveyed the core message. I also fully admit that I have not actually watched the video that triggered me, nor do I intend to do so. I have not mentioned the specific channels referred to earlier, because the point is not to bash them and start some sort of YouTube battle, because that's just going down the same rabbit hole. The point is to put out a constructive antidote. I do know that they will always have far more views than this tiny channel, but with this video I can say that at least I did my part, and now I can ignore them and move on with good conscience. So, to conclude all of this, Games Workshop is a company, and will set the highest prices they can according to the market opportunities they have. Games Workshop don't want to increase prices. They are selling plastic toys, and cannot rely on actual needs to keep consumption going. Don't gloat if they are in trouble. Just because they are trying to get your money, does not mean it's you versus them. You want them to succeed. As a consumer, you should always be skeptical of company information. And you should always focus on value added. And speaking of value, if you don't enjoy your hobby, your models have no value. So until next time, enjoy your hobby.